Okay, we're going to do Sun and Saturn conjunction for ascendants now. 1 second for me. And let's try it now. That's better. Okay, so despite the fact that this is obviously a difficult conjunction, it can also give quite good sort of results for certain ascendants. So here we go. For Aries ascendant, obviously this brings together 5th, 10th, and 11th house rulers together. So Sun being the 5th house ruler, pretty amazing. And so, Saturn gets directional strength in the 7th house, and the Sun in the 10th house. I have to say, if he is in Capricorn, well, this person is going to be into politics, and so this if it occurs there, it's going to create fantastic Raja Dhanur yoga of success. It creates a Sasha yoga as well. It's one of those Mahaprusha yoga for accomplishment and everything. But the person will be quite humble in a sense too. So it's an interesting one. So obviously, if it happens in the first house, there's going to be a difficulty there because Saturn will be debilitated, but Sun will be exalted. So Sun will actually cancel the weaknesses of Saturn. So in that sense, actually, the person will shine in a sense. But in terms of work and groups of friends, there are going to be some issues there. So, and but they could be a little bit work shy too, because they could have or they could be like an advisory job. They could be like educated and everything else. They could be an educator as such, but definitely could be politics and everything. But they don't necessarily, as a politician, they might end up not doing what they say. So yeah, you got to see like a debilitated Saturn is not going to be as consistent, but the Sun will help Saturn in that case. But anyway, you definitely want to look after your teeth. You want to look at your, just don't do anything risky in that sense. Just be careful. But also they will have very, very successful friends, groups, networks, and elder sibling could be also in politics, something like that too. If you happen in the second house, obviously Saturn is stronger than the Sun. They could also be, it brings 11th house ruler in the second house. So it's very much to do with money once they actually are in a relationship or they got family money. But it would be a very strict family too, because that's what Saturn does, because they're worried about what other people think. And they will probably have this palatial house, and they'll have lots of antiques and things, because Saturn also in good condition there likes old things. In the third house, they will be in a job to do with communication, media, maybe even if they are a politician or an educator, teacher, that kind of thing. They'll be they have very creative ways of actually their message to the world will always have like an advice thing to it as well. So these sort of adverts that you see on television, that they're constantly sort of this is for your good, that kind of thing. Buy this and you're going to do this, and because they got that voice that you actually think you will trust it because of Saturn and Sun commands that, they could be quite influential people. In the fourth house, they could be in politics or something like that, because fourth house is all to do with your homeland. So they could be quite dedicated to a community, be very much of service to the community, and both of them will be aspect in the 10th house. So that would be pretty good. The only thing is, though, it just means that parents and family, early family, was very, very strict, very much like doing the right thing, that kind of thing. In the 5th house, Sun is going to be very strong. Saturn is going to be harmed by being in Sun's house. So this is going to be a situation where there's expectation of the children, expectation of their education. There's that expectation going on all the time, and this is all to do with like what other people think, because it's Saturn is aspecting and protecting the 11th house, so they will have some really, really important friends, networks, and elder sibling could be very successful too. In the sixth house, that will break all the yogas anyway, but they will be somebody who works for the government, like a civil servant, somebody in, of that caliber. And they would just, also there could be medics too, because sixth house is health, education, schools, things like that. In the seventh house, Sun will be debilitated, Saturn will be exalted. So this will be good for working with others. Again, politicians who actually are a bit more humble in dealing with other people, more like ambassadors, law even, things like that. Actually, sixth house could be law as well. And in the eighth house, which we have there, so, there is something secretive going on about their job, really. And I always think, watch out for politicians like that. But they could also be like, particularly in Anuradha, will be like, obviously Saturn is not very comfortable there, but Sun is very comfortable. But they could be like secret groups that they're with, secret societies. They could just have this. It could be something like, there could be a commander in secret service or something like that, and also spying, that kind of thing going on. In the ninth house, it'd be really good for both, because both of them do well. Both of them are friendly towards Jupiter. Saturn is kind of neutral. That would be quite nice. So it'd be education, they could be in religion, theology, those kind of jobs. They could also be in publishing. In the 10th house, obviously, this is going to be the highest thing. Some will have directional strength as well. Saturn will be in own sign, so it'll be very, very successful. And job, whatever they do, will be good. It could also be like civil servants. What do they call them? I've forgotten now. They could do things to do with infrastructure as well, like roads and bridges. They could be doing planning for things like that too. In the 11th house, obviously, they're going to be in more organizations, big organization, maybe even pharmaceuticals, banking, because obviously fifth house ruler is aspected there. Some will protect the fifth house from there. And there's always this expectation of their kids as well. In the 12th house, Saturn does well. Their Sun is not so happy there, even though it's in a friendly sign. But obviously there'll be something secretive about their job. They could also be doing something to do with imports, exports, something to do with secret sort of secret investments, educating like foreign people, or working abroad like an ambassador or something, working for something like that. Now, for the next ascendant, Taurus ascendant, if it happens in the first house, Saturn will be happy there, but Sun will not. And it's unfriendly sign to Sun, but it's also fourth house rule in the first house, so it brings like a really nice Raja Yoga to the first house. This is also the Yoga Karaka planet Saturn in the first house. So the person will be very serious, very ambitious, and obviously will be underneath it. They'll be quite scared, because Saturn in the first house can make one quite fearful, but it could be that their dad is really strict too, ninth house ruler, and also Sun is also indicates that kind of thing. They feel as though, dad is always on their back, kind of thing, or I have to do the right thing. In the second house, friendly sign to both Sun and also Saturn. And what happens? It creates money as well, like family money, or get married will bring their luck in, because activates the ninth house. And they could also be working on home, with their family business, and they could also have like something, for example, like they could redecorate homes, property development, land development. They could be in car dealerships, things like that. And in the third house, so this is a nice done Raj Yogas going on there together. And then the third house, obviously, you know, Sun is stronger, Saturn is not so strong, you know, there, but will be aspect in the ninth house, looking after the ninth house of education. But definitely these people, you know, they would be they'd be very dedicated to their homeland, because Cancer is the natural fourth house to the zodiac, is the local community. But they emotionally touch people's hearts, you know, because obviously it could be something that they do in their job, because it's 10th house ruler too, Saturn. So yeah, they could be in communication or media, but they'd be very serious, and people will take them. Maybe they are like political journalists or something of that nature. And in the and it gets better with time. In the fourth house, obviously, they're very, very much into the government, working in government, housing, maybe working for their homeland, that kind of thing. Both of them aspect in the 10th house will be amazing. Saturn will look after that. There'll be lots of successes there, but there'll be some issues as well, because, you know, there is Saturn is in, you know, in Leo, and with a malefic like the Sun, enemies. You know, there's a lot of you know, there's a lot of expectation of family, dad, etc., like that. And in the fifth house, obviously, they both do well in Mercury's sign, but they'd be really micromanaging their children. They could be students though, and they could be also in law, that kind of thing, and politics. In the sixth house, obviously, Saturn will be exalted, Sun will be debilitated here. And this could be, again, it breaks all the yogas, but they could be an extremely great teachers. They could be working for health establishments, medical establishments, you know, that kind of thing. In you know, service to others, civil service, really. And also litigation for sure. And in the seventh house, obviously Saturn is uncomfortable there. Sun does pretty well there, and it's also fourth house, really, in the seventh house with the ninth house ruler, you know, so he creates lovely Raj Yogas. But you know that people see you as a very respected person. You actually attract somebody with status, somebody serious, you know, quite career-minded, ambitious person. And in the eighth house, obviously there'll be something secretive about there. You know, home, family, job could be something secretive about dad. And they could just work for Secret Service, maybe even. They could be healers, the occults, that kind of thing. In the ninth house, obviously, Sun will be with Saturn. That's really, really strong Saturn. So dad could have massive expectations of them, and they literally have to very educationally minded. They could be in law, because ninth house has got connotations of law too. That could be what the job is all about. And but there'd be always some fear, you know, because Saturn's aspect in Cancer. So there's always they always worry about safety, and there's always something they worry about, siblings, things like that. And in the 10th house, obviously, some will have directional strength. Saturn will be also in own sign. This will be really strong. Sun will be aspecting and protecting the fourth house. Again, this could be a job to do with cars, homes, lands, things like that, government, institutions. It could be like banking. It could be a governmental thing. It could be a corporation, institution, something like that. And in the 11th house, obviously, it's a sign that both do well. And so they will have very creative friends. They could be quite humanitarian friends. And in the 12th house, Sun will be exalted, but it's not a good position for the Sun. And Saturn, obviously, you know, there'll be it kind of loses some of the things to do with the yogas. However, it's not a yoga breaker, but, you know, there could be some losses, but, you know, some addictions that could or the vitality, rejuvenation, that kind of thing. So maybe the person needs to just not overwork, because this combination can make you work really hard. Right, next one. Gemini Ascendant brings together 8th, 9th house ruler Saturn and 3rd house ruler Sun. So this is all about travel, education, skill set, friends, that all that kind of thing. So in the first house, neither of them have got directional strength, but Saturn will be strong. But again, it brings fear and humility to the first house. They're quite serious people too. But they could be quite handy too, because the 3rd house things to do with the sun. And this is a sign of hands. So they could be really amazing at DIY and things like that. They can work things out. In the 2nd house, the family will be quite strict. The first half of the first part of their life could be quite sort of rigid, not very nurturing. In the 3rd house, some will be strong, so they'll have very amazing, important friends, their colleagues and their siblings and everything. They could be quite accomplished people, educated, well-traveled people. But you know, it doesn't kind of. And from there, obviously, Saturn will be aspecting the 5th house. So they could be very, very creative, artistic people, and their dad could be the same. And in the 4th house, obviously, you put 2 malefics into the 4th house. So it could be a family that are very much into their health and very much into serving others, because Virgo is naturally to do with service. But they're both aspecting. So it would be quite a sort of cold household in a sense. But it will be amazing for their job, because both of them are aspecting the 10th house. And so these people could be medics, because the 10th house is Pisces. Pisces normally to do with physicians, biology, that kind of thing. And in the 5th house, Saturn will be exalted, Sun will be debilitated. So this will be somebody who's like, they could feel a little bit of pressure from their dad, from their friends, that kind of thing. But working with others, working with children, and education, all that kind of things makes them feel lovely, you know. So they could be that they get all that, their luck kicks in when they're educating, they're traveling, that kind of thing. But there could be sudden changes in their education as well. So they could start studying and then they have to break and come back to their education. But definitely all those 5th house things of romance and children and everything else makes them very happy. And they could also have children who are they could micromanage their children a little bit too. But they want them to be socially aware, if you like, have the social graces. In the 6th house, obviously breaks all their yogas. However, they will be very good at serving others. They could be very work for governmental places, working behind, you know, some in a secretive job maybe. But yeah, it's a governmental thing that they could be working on. Mediation could be a really good one with Anuradha, actually, if they fall in that. In the 7th house, obviously, Sun is going to feel debilitated. Saturn is going to feel good in there. So it will be, the job will be they will be respected by others. They will see, other people will see them as like people who are, you know, do the right thing by the community, if you like. And they expect somebody who's educated and well-traveled as well. In the 8th house, that could have some issues with health and things like that. And education could also be like they could learn things about like 3rd house stuff, maybe commerce and stock market, communication. And 9th house, if they're there, is aspecting the 3rd house too, so protecting the 3rd house. So it'll be like the father will be highly respected within the community, like somebody who's quite humanitarian, somebody who's, you know, like respected, educated person too. In the 10th house, some will have directional strength, so the job to do with some creative job. They could be like they could be a surgeon. For sure, be working in a hospital situation. In the 11th house, Sun will be exalted, Saturn will be debilitated. So they'll have like good and bad luck with the groups of friends that they have. They could, you know, have very egotistical friends, or they could have really humble friends. So, and also some of their friends can just like, then they don't, you know, they could, because an eclipse on the 11th house, so be careful with your friends, you know, that kind of thing. With Taurus, obviously, we don't want Sun in the 12th house. Saturn does quite well in the 12th house, so it could just be that. But having two malefics in your 12th house, it just means that, you know, they falling asleep is not that easy. They go through periods of not sleeping so well, because they might be overthinking that, did I do this, did I finish that, because they're always thinking about doing the right thing. And it could just be that dad was unavailable to them at points in their life, or maybe stepdad brought them up, or maybe the whole family, you know, maybe dad was living abroad, that kind of thing. Cancer ascendant. For Cancer ascendant, you have 7th and 8th house ruler Saturn with 2nd house ruler. So you can see that the family, the in-laws, because it brings together 8th house and 2nd house. So the family, they have like their family and their in-laws are kind of quite different to each other, but they kind of like to have this facade, you know, for the world. So yeah, they both like to be part of a influential government. You know, they both kind of are involved either in politics or in government. Both families, very respectful families too. So in the first house, obviously Saturn will be aspecting the 7th house, protecting it. Obviously, it creates a lot of fear having Saturn in Cancer and Saturn in the first house. You know, the whole family are always kind of like they're seeking security, and they could come from a family that they don't give them, because both Saturn and Sun drain that kind of Cancer, the emotional side of life. So yeah, the families are much more doing rather than nurturing, if you like. In the 2nd house, obviously this creates like a very respectable family, very people kind of look up to them, because Sun in the 2nd house, and family money is also protected because Sun is there. And actually, once they are in a relationship, their 2nd house of money kicks in. They would be very good at saving money, actually. And because Saturn also aspect in the 8th house and looking after the 8th house, so they'd be okay with changes, but those changes could actually be beneficial to them as well. In the 3rd house, both of them do well in Mercury sign, so they could be they're not going to be a very chatty family, if you like. The communication could be kind of suppressed because of Saturn being there, and but you certainly would listen to these people if they were to be talking to you. But they would obviously have some friends who were quite well-to-do and respectable, and some friends who are just like normal blue-collar, you know, average person like me. In the 4th house, Sun will be debilitated, Saturn will be exalted. So this could be, so Saturn cancels, but Sun's debilitation and helps the 4th house. So you could just show that early family, early education was pretty difficult for them. However, you know, if both of them are aspect in the 10th house, so they could work with their mum, with their family. They could also be in working for the homeland, maybe for police or something like that. And yeah, so it will protect, both of them will protect it. It's definitely sort of a governmental job, and it could be a military job because that police, fire service, forces. In the 5th house, obviously Sun is happy there, Saturn is not happy in Mars's house. But yeah, this could be obviously somebody who is in education, in politics. There'd be something secretive about their job too, because they're indicators of jobs, really, not so much because they rule the 10th house here, but they are indicators of the 10th house. So in the 6th house, so both do quite well in the 6th house, in the sense that they both malefic, so they help things get better at work, and serving others will really serve them in the long run. But it does break all the yogas anyway. But there could be some difficulties in terms, there could be a divorce, there could be a lot of bickering with in the family, with a spouse, that kind of thing, sudden changes. But brings 8th house ruler Saturn in the 6th house, and that could actually mean that their situation will get better with time. So after going through some difficulties, then success will come. In the 7th house, Saturn will have directional strength, its own sign, so it will be a very successful marriage, very high status marriage. And in the 8th house, Saturn own sign, Saturn gives longevity in the 8th house, and some will be aspect in the 2nd house. This is definitely very powerful in laws. And in the 9th house, so it will be a father who works for, it could be a medic because of Pisces, or it could be a dad who's a judge, or works for the government, that kind of thing. In the 10th house, obviously some will be exalted, Saturn will be debilitated. So it could be that the job, there's some chop and changes in the job because 8th house ruler is there and it's debilitated too. So it could bring some difficulties in the job, some losses, etc. But some will be very exalted there. So yeah, it could definitely be secret service job, that kind of, like, I don't know, surveillance, that kind of thing. In the 11th house, you'll have and that could have been in the forces too, by the way. In the 11th house, obviously Sun's not happy there, but it brings 2nd house ruler there. So the money will kick in a bit later in life, 36 upwards, because 2nd house ruler there. There's sudden change of luck there. And 9th house ruler is also in the 11th house. So it's really good yogas there. In the 12th house, it's not good when Sun is in the 12th house. It's also 2nd house ruler there, so there's a lot of expenditure for the money, for family health, maybe hospitalization, that kind of thing. Secret enemies could create issues because 8th house ruler is there, but it also creates a Viprit Raj Yoga again. So through difficulties and losses, expenditure, or even addictions, things will change for the better. Okay, so Leo ascendant. This is obviously Leo is Sun rules the 1st house, and 6th and 7th house are ruled by Saturn. So this is actually going to break all the yogas, but with time they will get some fruits. It just takes time. You've got to wait till you're 36 or above. But these people will be amazing at service to the others. In the 1st house, that this could bring health issues for you, but you also could be working in for the government, social services. You could be socially aware and working for people who just got debts and issues, that kind of thing. And definitely litigation could be a thing. Very much service oriented, teachers, etc. In the 2nd house, family will be very strict, micromanage you. They really, a family that really care about how other people see you. Quite serious, quite practical family. In the 3rd house, Sun is debilitated. So although you'd be somebody who will be very creative and everything, but they'd be a bit shy about talking because it's the 3rd house of speech, and that just gets better with time. And obviously, they might actually have a limited number of friends as well, but with time that actually Saturn really helps with the travel, learning skills, friends, and they'll have limited friends but really good friends. And they probably like independent travel as well on their own, just take off. And in the 4th house, obviously 2 malefics in the 4th house, it can be difficult, because it could give you a family that's family secrets anyway, because it's a secretive house. And also family could be quite rigid in their ways, and quite Saturnian, and quite militant. Mother could have health issues. Make sure you look after your car as well, because 2nd house, 6th house ruler in the 4th house. Always make sure you repair things at home, and and your car as well. And this is so it's aspect in the 10th house. So they could be working in like hotels, farming, travel industry, something like that. But they'd be bosses there eventually. In the 5th house, it could be education, young people, teachers, teaching theology, maybe even, because the 6th house, service to people, and advising people, you know, on things that can go wrong, say, you know, with people's education, debts, things like that. In the 6th house, it could be a teacher working for government institutions like civil service, civil servants, that kind of thing. And yeah, Saturn will be very strong. They'll be very, very hardworking. Make sure you look after your health, guys, because these people work really, really hard, and Sun is your ruler. So look after yourself. In the 7th house, Saturn will have directional strength there in own sign. So this creates lovely sort of situation where the 1st house and 7th house will be, you know, taken care of, because they're Saturn is sitting there in own sign and Sun is aspecting itself. So they actually get a lot of respect at work. In the 8th house, the job can be to do with surgery and working in hospitals and things like that, or the forces also. And in the 9th house, dad could be a dad and education, belief system and everything. You might go against the family belief system, but yeah, so that could be quite a personality, or you could be quite close to your dad, or your dad can make you feel really sort of like you're not as good as, if you like, that kind of thing, because Saturn is debilitated there. And also just be aware of your partner as well, so you know that you don't try and kind of overshadow them in any way. In the 10th house, obviously Sun has got directional strength. Saturn is nice and strong there too, a friendly sign to them. So this will be quite good for the job. You know, they could be working for government, schools, agriculture, that kind of travel industry, but they'll be very dedicated to that job. And in the 11th house, it could be banking, that banking, friends and everything else. They got a nice group of friends and they do sort of friendly things with them, you know, like group, like basketball, football, that kind of thing. In the 12th house, obviously not a great place for Sun, even though it's a friendly sign, 12th house. And it could actually give addiction issues, expenses, letting go is difficult, never, you know, finishing things, and that could give you like stress, because Saturn is stress, and sleeplessness. So you've got to make sure you always like end things that you start. That's a really good way of dealing with that. And but it could also be that you work in behind the scenes, you know, in your job. So yeah, maybe you work with prisoners and you know, educate them. And then let's go to Virgo ascendant. So this is like 12th house ruler Sun and 5th and 6th house ruler Saturn. So these people definitely can be teaching behind the scenes, remote teaching, working with younger people, delinquent children, you know, youth hostels, things like that. That could be the job. And in the 1st house, obviously, you know, it's 12th house rule in the 1st house. So you feel a little bit lost in your early years as well, quite, you know, quite serious, quite melancholy, hard on yourself. So you've got to be looking after yourself, you know, because this is the 1st house and 12th house ruler and 6th house ruler come into there. So just see that, do I actually make my own debts, create my own enemies, create my own obstacles? Am I actually, you know, am I the person who creates my own issues? So this is something that you learn as time goes by, and then you sort of like unfold yourself and put away that victim coat, and then you empower yourself really. And you know, both of them aspect in your 7th house, so you would attract somebody who's hardworking and very sort of like committed person. In the 2nd house, Sun debilitated, so, and Saturn is exalted. So family can give you losses money wise. You can't save money because of that, but Saturn in the end will win that. You actually learn not to not to deal with that, because the second house also things that we eat, less, or smoking, drinking, that kind of thing. So after a while, Saturn kicks in and you kind of overcome those issues that you might have. It could also make you curse as well, because it's the second house, 12th house ruler. So yeah, but again, it gets better with time. Best thing is to actually work on Venus there, because Venus is the dispositor. In the third house, obviously, this is somebody who, when they speak, people will listen because they have something of value to say. So quite formidable in that sense. And they could learn a lot of skills remotely. They could lose friends as well, because obviously 12th house ruler in the third house, or they could actually be a linguist, learn with foreign languages, because this 12th house is foreign. And and foreign language in foreign students or in a school. And then we have, or you could also help people, give them the skills and information they need to deal with any sort of health issues that they have, or debts, etc. In the fourth house, obviously, you've got two malefics in the fourth house. So the family, you could also have issues with mum, or mum could be foreign, or your home, you live abroad. And from there, obviously, they're both aspect in the 10th house, which means that you could be working in like for homeland, governmental things behind the scenes, and you get quite a lot of respect for that as well. So you could be in housing people, stuff like that, house repairs, social housing. In the 5th house, it can be your own education. Saturn will be very strong there. It could also be that you're in politics too. 6th house ruler in the 5th house, service to others, and 6th house ruler if it's in the 6th house. So there's somebody of service to others, schools, education, academic education, and teaching remotely behind the scenes. And in the 7th house, obviously, it just means that you're attracted to people who are quite ambitious, and maybe a foreign partner as well, because Pisces is 12th house of natural zodiac, and Sun rules the 12th house. And it could also be that you deal with those sort of kind of people, because 7th house is 10th houses from 10th house, so you deal with very sort of like foreign politicians, etc. In the 8th house, Sun will be exalted, Saturn will be debilitated, but Saturn actually will create a Viparit Yoga, because it's 6th house ruler in the 5th house, in the 8th house. So that after some difficulties, luck will kick in. These people should never really invest in anything 5th house, because bad investments can incur debts and losses. So the job could have some secret elements to it too. But one needs to learn with that in order to kick in the Viparit Yoga, to be consistent, because 8th house can be very inconsistent, ups and downs. The more you're consistent in your job, the more you kick this in, the luck. In the 9th house, obviously, it's house of education. So it just means that you might be working as an educator in a university, high school, etc. In the 10th house, some will have directional strength. So you could be working in a school abroad, foreign students, teaching foreign language to students, or could be an ambassador, that kind of thing. In the 11th house, you'll have very powerful friends, or your elder sibling is quite powerful, but you will not have a good relationship with them, because 12th house is involved, and also 6th house. And in the 12th house, obviously, Sun will be in own sign, And it could just be that maybe you're not so close to your children, maybe you had problems with your education. Education created some losses and expenses for you. Okay. Libra Ascendant. For Libra Ascendant, this is 11th house ruler Sun and Yoga Karaka planet, 4th and 5th house ruler Saturn. So this is going to be good as long as it doesn't fall into the 6th house or 12th house as well. I'm just going to put that there as well, just because Sun doesn't do well there. Okay, so in the first house, you have a debilitated Sun, which also created Dan Yoga, 11th house ruler in the first house, but Yoga Karaka planet in the first house. So this, you're going to be very serious, hardworking, and you're going to feel all those hardships, but your luck will, Saturn, once it kicks in with Saturn return, or, you know, after the age of 36, you're going to shine. All those things that you fear will just, you know, you'll conquer them. In the second house, the family is well-to-do. It brings 11th house rule in the second house, really good for money, wealthy family, you know, nice situation, family home, and children and education, etc. Yeah, kind of movers, shakers, really powerful friends, wealthy friends, secret society friends. In the third house, both do quite well in the third house because they're malefics. People will really listen to them and respect whatever you say, because it'll have the focus of Sagittarius, and the, you know, words of wisdom will come out. So they'll have very, very good skill sets, really. In the fourth house, mother will be very respected, might work in government, might be a politician even, or you are really dedicated to your homeland. Those both will be aspected. Sun and Saturn will be aspected in your 10th house, you know, so really working for the homeland, working for housing, maybe social housing. You might even be a builder, actually, because Saturn gives that building thing as well. So, but you will be a boss rather than, you know, so eventually, you know, creates lovely yogas as well. 11th house ruler, 5th house ruler in the 4th house. In the 5th house, you know, that education will bring you all these kick in, like your Purva Punya children, family, and your groups of friends. You get lots of help for them, loads of very, very important friends. Very good for gains, investments, banking, etc. And in the 6th house, obviously, it's going to destroy the good yogas. It does get better with time. However, this will be somebody who could be a medical doctor, works in a hospital, etc., or it could be a doctor in prison environment, working behind the scenes, scientist. In the 7th house, Sun will be exalted, 11th house ruler in the 7th house, and 8th house, Yoga Karaka planet, although it's an angle sign, it'll be debilitated. So there could be some sort of health issue with your partner. And yeah, so got to be aware of that. In the 8th house, obviously, Saturn does well in the 8th house in Taurus, gives longevity. However, it also creates lots of ups and downs, you know, can have problems having children, can have issues with some of your friends, family, that kind of thing. You know, cars could break down, you could be prone to accidents and things like that. So you've got to look after yourself and make sure that you look after what you eat, you know, let go of any emotional things that hold you back. So you conquer that, really. In the 9th house, both do quite well in Gemini. So it could be a dad who is really friendly, well-to-do, has got really, you know, well-traveled. But it might make you go against because of Saturn, against the family belief systems. So you could be slightly different to them. In the 10th house, some will have directional strength. It's 11th house ruler, so they're very, very successful yoga there. Very good. So good for everything. Good for education, good for family, good for work, good for friends, success, etc., etc. For the in the 11th house, Sun will be strong. Obviously, it will damage Saturn a little bit, being with Sun. Nonetheless, there is the Yoga Karaka planet in the 11th house, aspect in the 5th house as well, looking after the 5th house things. So yeah, education, They could be very romantic. They could be very good advisors, good politicians, etc., etc. Politician friends, very influential friends in the 12th house. 12th house, not very good for the sun, although it's a friendly sign, and Saturn in the 12th house is not too bad, but it can give you, at night time when you go to bed, you can think about all those little details that you miss, that kind of thing. Okay, Sun, Saturn continued. So let's see now. Okay, for Scorpio ascendant, this is your 3rd and 4th house ruler, and also your 10th house ruler. So you could also be one of those people who, to do with your work, either your family's work, your dad's work, for example, or like your own work, family work, you are constantly moving. So this could be a governmental job that moves you according to what's happening. So in the 1st house, you have obviously 10th house ruler in the 1st house, the sun in nice condition there, with Saturn, 3rd and 4th house ruler. So this is obviously, Saturn on the ascendant makes one really kind of quite fearful normally, but having the sun there, you're not like, and you are the person who makes the career. You really put a lot of effort into your job. You make your own success, your own luck. So but remember to look after yourself, because you've got 2 malefics on the ascendant. But it's also 4th house ruler in the 1st house, another Raja Yoga. So there's multiple good things going on there. But actually, you've got to look after your health, make sure you've got a good balance between your home and your work life. And then, so for in the 2nd house, you'll have like that the family that you're brought up in the 2nd house, in actual fact, Sun does really well there. It's a 10th house rule in the 2nd house. It's a successful family money, and also you and your siblings and everything else. It's a quite close family, but it's quite reserved. They're quite ambitious. They're hardworking. They probably are very good at serving others, homeland, and things like that. And there's little expectation really. In the 3rd house, obviously Saturn is very, very strong there. So 3rd house and 4th house ruler in the 3rd house, you're constantly moving. And and it just, sun there makes having 2 malefics there, particularly the sun, will make somebody who's really able to work for things to do with homeland, things to do with social housing, for example, governmental jobs, to do like home secretary or something like that, and moving like an ambassador around. That's a very, very strong Saturn there. In the 4th house, obviously you've got 2 malefics in the 4th house, so you've got to make sure that you are, have that kindness at home, but nonetheless though, you are very successful, because the 10th house really is aspect in the 10th house, nice and strong. And so also, mother could be quite like primary teacher, school, something like that. You could be in education as well, because 3rd house is, but you could also be house developing, property developing, in real estate too, and be quite high up. In the 5th house, it can obviously be that you are quite determined that your children do well at education, creative children. You're probably the softer side of you comes out with this placement, where family, children, and all of that, and just doing fun things with them does really make you happy. And Sun loves being in the 5th house anyway, and it's a friendly sign, and it's a sign that makes both of them quite dignified. So loving doing fun things with children, and maybe you're even interested in things like the arts, amateur dramatics, etc. In the 6th house, clearly this is going to break the yogas there, but it'd be somebody who could be in some form of military, healing, health, medical service. but it does break the yogas. It does get better with time. The success comes a little bit later. In the 7th house, we have obviously Saturn is better there than the Sun. Sun doesn't like being Venus's sign, and obviously, you know, has got no direction in the 7th house. But Saturn has got direction in the 7th house, so it makes one person quite devotional towards other people, doing the right thing for them. And both of them actually aspect in the 1st house create lovely Raja yogas there. In the but you do want somebody quite kind of like somebody who's quite hardworking, maybe come from, you know, family background similar to yours, I would imagine. In the 8th house, obviously, it just means that the work will be some ups and downs to do with the job, you know, breaks in the job, do some sort of surveillance, that kind of cyber security, that form of job, secret job, or, you know, secret military maybe even. And yeah, so but both of them do well in the 8th house, gives you nice longevity as well. In there is something secret though about either siblings, family, or dad. In the 9th house, clearly this is going to be good for Saturn in the sense that it actually protects 3rd house from it. High, you know, educated, creates lovely done yoga, 10th house ruler in the 9th house, and friendly sign too for the Sun. So this would be great educator, great advisor, great at litigation. Could also be somebody who does governmental job to do with law. And in the 10th house, well, Sun is going to be amazingly strong there, directional strength to own sign, and also aspecting Saturn is aspecting own sign. So this will be somebody who's highly respected in their country, within their government, within their political life, stuff like that. So nice and strong. There could also be teachers, educators. In the 11th house, you're going to have in the 11th house, you're going to find that the friends are going to be from a healing background. Some of the friends are you know, again, you know, they could be in they could do competitive sport with some of the friends, but definitely, you know, very intellectual friends. In the 12th house, clearly not a good sign for Sun, because also Sun is debilitated there. So sometimes maybe traveling abroad and things like that will be very difficult for these people. And Saturn will be quite strong there though, in the 12th house. It is also the significator of the 12th house, but it does pretty well there. But yeah, it could give you some sleepless nights. You could just like not be able to let go of things easily. So that is that one. I'm gonna have to be quicker with this. It takes such a long time to do these videos. Sagittarius ascendant. So for you guys, this is going to be 2nd and 3rd house ruler and 9th house ruler coming together. Creates money, and with more effort and bravery and everything, things will just kick in the 1st house. Neither of them have got direction there. Both in okay house. They like to be in you know, it's dignified being in there. But it's going to be somebody who's obviously quite refined, educated, somebody who loves learning, loves reading. But don't forget that you got 2 malefics on your ascendant. So be good to yourself and don't work yourself to the bone, if you like. Just make sure whenever you're feeling tired, get yourself a nice massage or a holiday or something. In the 2nd house, obviously Saturn is going to be in own sign. Wonderful in terms of like really, really strong. And it's going to be a family of very, very strong kind of like family values, religious family, possibly very ambitious family. And in the 3rd house, obviously Saturn rules that. So, you know, it could just be that everybody in the family are quite close to each other. They're really hardworking, and they probably not necessarily the most sociable people in that sense, but there is like a closeness. They have each other's back, you know, because Saturn is own sign, Sun is looking after itself. They travel, you know, things that they do, there's a purpose to their like traveling. They want to travel for work, for religion, pilgrimage, education, etc. In the fourth house, obviously, you've got two malefics there, but it's also nice Dana yogas there and Raja yogas going on. So it's also aspecting what would be the 10th house. So it's good for the 10th house. So these people could be like work for the home secretaries. They could be like quite high up, really. It could also be like property developers, home, you know, work with cars, things like that, work with building of the homes and things like that, maybe. But in a more kind of more like the bosses, really, I would say, because any planet with Saturn, it kind of, you see what kind of thing they do. So if they are, Sun is with Saturn, you can see that they could be in housing, social housing. In the fifth house, it could be that obviously debilitated Saturn, but you have like an exalted Sun. So you know that dad is successful. It's quite an academic, could be quite sporty dad, but you know, nonetheless, that you know the family, you know. You always feel as though you know you haven't achieved quite as much as your dad. They feel like the family doesn't or something. But Sun obviously helps Saturn there. So and yeah, so that could be education, quite formal education, done everything as, you know, very much like they are, the sort of families are really respected, the children are really respected within the community. In the sixth house, obviously that breaks all the yogas. However, it is somebody who works in service of others and very dedicated to that as well. In the seventh house, obviously Saturn has got directional strength in friendly sign. Sun is also in friendly sign, so they're obviously looking for somebody who comes from their own religious background, their own educational background. In the eighth house, it could be that father has got issues with their health, or it could be that there is some breaks in the education. In the 10th house, you have Sun's got in ninth house, Sun's got like own sign with Saturn is uncomfortable there. So you know that sometimes the dad shines quite a lot more than, you know, yourself. But it's a very learned family, educated, traveled, you know, really kind of cultured family. In the 10th house, Sun's ninth house rule in the 10th house, nice and strong, very, very important career in management, in social services, just fantastic, really. Could also be in medicine, healing. In 11th house, Saturn will be strong, exalted, Sun will be debilitated. So it'll be somebody who's kind of like quite humble around friends. That ego is not so bad when Sun has got a little ego, really, but it could be that dad has struggled with their friends, groups of friends. In the 12th house, obviously Saturn is not comfortable there, but it's okay in 12th house. Enemy sign, Sun is in friendly sign, but it's not a good position. I'll probably say this is probably not a good position for either of them. So, you know, it could give you have letting go issues, you know, but it's really good because two malefics makes you really complete things. It could almost be that sort of person that's constantly like thinking, like they start a book, but they don't really enjoy it, but they feel they should do the right thing and read it to the end. So sacrifice themselves, really. Okay, Capricorn ascendant. Capricorn ascendant, this is first and second house ruler together with the eighth house ruler. So, you know, there are some chop and changes in the family. You have a transformational life with sort of like feeling out of control at times. Sudden gains, sudden losses. But you make yourself in the end succeed. In the first house, Saturn will be really strong, but it's a life of transformation. Money can be up and down as well. Your relationship with your parents can be up and down, your family. In second house, obviously pretty good for Saturn, second house ruler in the second house, first house ruler in the second house, lovely done yogas. Eighth house ruler doesn't actually break that, but what it does, Sun is also protecting the eighth house, and this means that although changes are difficult for them because nature of the eighth house is fixed, however, it's pretty good for them in the long run. Longevity too. In the third house, this is going to be like a family of, you know, so you could just have some issues with your younger sibling, things like that. But you know, some friends can just let you down, but you overcome that because you got two malefics in your third house. You makes you nice and brave because you put effort into your life. In the fourth house, you know that this is going to be like you gain your own home. You work hard and you create that. But be careful driving a car, make sure it's in good condition, stuff like that, good repair. Make sure you keep your house in good repair because otherwise, you know, you could just like be, definitely don't speed. It could also be that your mother, you know, like had some, you know, like unfortunate times in your younger years. And however, they're both looking at the 10th house, which is good in the sense, and you know, Saturn is debilitated there too, so you know, you could feel a little bit inferior to your family, but it'd be sitting with an exalted sun there, so changes will actually be good for the family. And but it could also be the family situation changes, you know, transformational, can be difficult. On the 10th house though, that could, because obviously it really energizes the 10th house, is that they is talking about balance between fourth and 10th, just making sure that you make time for both. But it could just obviously be that you do work in maybe litigation, in law, in commerce, import, export, that kind of thing. In the fifth house, this is obviously going to be somebody who had very formal education. It could be that you studied some, you also could be somebody who was really interested in the occults as well, because eighth house ruler into in that. But definitely somebody who's had maybe some breaks in their education, and maybe you know, suddenly have a child. Sixth house, obviously this is going to break the yogas, but it's eighth house rule in the sixth house. The sun will create, after some changes and everything, a difficult situation will actually make you rise in life. And then we have, but make sure you look after your own health and well-being, you know, just good exercise, good daily routine, eating well, exercising, really look after yourself. Don't be hard on yourself, you know, because Sun Saturn can be hard on oneself. In the seventh house, obviously you're looking for somebody who, it could give you like obviously a break in the relationship for sure, but you would want to be with somebody who's quite respected in the, you know, generally, and maybe you kind of know that your family knows your in-laws, so you get to know them through family. In the eighth house, Sun is nice and strong. Saturn does well there and is protecting own second house, so this will be somebody who's obviously that could have some health issues, or that could, you know, like you could have you could have different sort of views to them, but yeah, it's good for longevity, and the two malefics can really help you with that. In the ninth house, then you have a situation where so you have got like first house ruler in the ninth house that can just suddenly, you know, your dad can just change your luck, family can change your luck, good for education. And in the 10th house, Sun will be debilitated and will have directional strength, very strange, and it's there with the with Saturn. Saturn is exalted there. So this is really good for justice, law, government jobs, working with others, all sort of Libran jobs where you're working with other people to do with government, big, you know, it's sort of like big firms, you know, big management companies and everything. In the 11th house, obviously you've got friends who are really sort of although there could be some losses there, but you know, they be secretive, sort of like secret society, secret networks, important people. In the 12th house, obviously we don't really like Sun in there, and two malefics there just makes you not be able to, you know, it's hard for you to fall asleep, hard to be sort of spiritual, really, in a sense. However, in the long, you can overcome those issues of life, because they're two malefics. And also you could be just addicted to spending. Okay, Aquarius. For Aquarius ascendant, so this is like 12th and first house ruler together with the seven house ruler. So this could be somebody obviously who has a foreign spouse or meet the spouse abroad. And so in the first house, you have 12th house rule. In the first house, you have problems letting go. So you have to stop feeling guilty and just get on with it, But it's also 7th house rule in the first house. So Sun creates a lovely Raja Yoga there, and first house rule is aspect in the 7th house. So it's really good for a relationship, and kind of you want somebody who's got similar status to yourself. Just don't be too tough on yourself. Look after your well-being. Don't work too hard. In the second house, you have a family who's quite reserved, hardworking people who could be in governmental jobs. In the third house, some will be exalted and debilitated. What do you call it? Saturn. And this could also be that basically what happens is you could have no younger sibling, or your basically your elder sibling. You could be the elder sibling, if you like, and the younger sibling can actually shine. You feel as though they're getting more attention than you. But it could also be that you have some really very friends that actually uplift you. They're very important friends, or you basically love, chatting with your friends and your partner and everything. You could also be that you are literally very shy to begin with, communicating, and then when it comes up, you really become very skilled at it. In the fourth house, clearly two malefics, and it's not, it just gives that rigid mum who's like really sort of hardworking and does the right thing by society and self and family, and they worry about how they're judged there. And also looking at the 10th house, which means that they could be working with mum, with family, they could, or spouse as well, and they could have this secretive job that actually they have really high status. So they could be in the background or something with the government, have a really highly well-paid job there. In the 5th house, this is somebody who's very sort of devoted to actually making sure their children have all the good things to do with, like life. So they have really good education. They make sure that they do all the classes, creative classes like music or whatever, languages and things like that. And also creates a done yoga there, 7th house rule in the 5th house for the sun. In the 6th house, obviously, it's going to break all the good yogas. However, it'll be somebody who works in the service field, maybe a nurse or that form of thing. In the 7th house, sun will be really, really strong there in own sign. Saturn will have directional strength, and it's going to help the sun, which doesn't like to be there. But it could be that, high expectation of these people could actually get married because of their expectations of family, or they're looking for a particular type of person who works for the government, that kind of thing. So you might meet them in place of work, because 7th house can show your work, if you like. In the 8th house, sun is happy there, so is Saturn. So it could be like gives you longevity, can give you a break in relationships too. But yeah, so just be careful. It's also like 12th house ruler in the 8th house, so it could just be that through difficulties, through going through some addiction issues and things like that, you'll actually succeed and you'll be self-made. In the 9th house, we have a exalted first house ruler, and also debilitated sun. So it could be that dad has got a certain, you're not of the same belief system as your dad. Maybe you're not as educated as dad was hoping you would be, that kind of thing. The expectations of dad was not met. In the 10th house, obviously, sun has got directional strength. This could again be a job behind the scenes, maybe in the hospital in terms of management or something. In the 11th house, you obviously got friends who are very sort of respected. And but those, and also you can gain and spend it quite easily too. So you've got to be careful with that. In the 12th house, obviously Saturn is 12th house ruler in the 12th house. But remember that this is also a house of career as well. So it could be somebody who struggles with their job, with work and career and everything, just is unable to just complete tasks, and there's some sort of issue there. Or it could be somebody who works abroad. So next one, Pisces ascendant. So for you guys, this is 11th and 12th house ruler Saturn and 6th house ruler Sun. So this is not going to be, neither planet is especially good for you. 11th house obviously gets better, but there is a tendency to actually spend or have addiction issues or be with friends who actually take from you rather than give to you. But it does get better with time, and it does create a Viparit Raj Yoga. In the first house, you could be the one who gains, then spends there, create expenses and losses and get yourself into debt. So you got to just look after yourself because of that very reason. So maybe that you are overdoing things. However, it could also be a job in a hospital, so which is quite humanitarian, looking after big groups and everything. In the second house, so this will be Saturn will be debilitated, Sun is exalted. So it could be that some of the family, you get on with, some you don't. It's also 11th house rule in the second house, but debilitated. So it's hard for you to hold on to money. And obviously because of the spending issue, really, and maybe spending because somebody in the family is poorly. In the third house, 2 malefics there, so it's really good for making you very, overcome all those fears and become quite a strong, brave person, express to yourself and others what you want and get what you want. So that in those terms is very good. So you might find friends take from you, but then you learn how to actually say what you want. In the 4th house, obviously you've got 2 malefics there, so it's not that great. However, what happens is that actually reflects onto the 10th house. So it could be a job for with land, cars, home improvement, land developing, that kind of thing. And in the 5th house, or you could also be an architect. In the 5th house, it could be like this could be like having children create, or your education created some debts for you. And so also somebody who in love gets heartbroken, and you've really got to work at not taking things too personally. In the 6th house, somebody's working in the genetics, or maybe like scientific field, education, teacher, hospital, healing, that kind of thing, or government job. In the 7th house will be obviously somebody who's looking for somebody who's a real sort of devoted to helping others and healer. In the 8th house, Sun will be debilitated, Saturn will be exalted. So it could literally, through devastations of life, you can just turn your life around. That those lessons are going to be absolutely crucial to your evolvement as a soul and really, really succeeding in life. In the 9th house, you'll have a dad who maybe who's a teacher in litigation, something like that, or you could be working in law and helping others get out of debt. In the 10th house is obviously Sun is very strong. There's definitely somebody who is in a manager of spa, hotel, maybe those kind of really governmental jobs too. In the 11th house, this will be Saturn in own sign, and with the 6th house ruler. So some of your friends could be your enemies as well. So some losses through friends. Don't lend them money, because you lose the money and your friend. In the 12th house, it could just be that you work. You need to just learn to look after yourself. Don't overwork. Don't overthink. Let go. Don't feel guilty about everything. Otherwise, it could upset your rejuvenation. But you could also be a medic too, work in a hospital. Okay, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Thank you.